It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, get your matcha, get your hot chocolate, get your iced tea, whatever the weather's bringing you. And speaking of weather, if you're in the areas that have been impacted by the harsh weather, oh, my sympathies. It's absolutely devastating. And I'm afraid there's more on the way, probably on Monday, as the moon moves into opposition with Pluto. So be as safe as you can be. Keep your eye on local weather forecasters who are the true heroes in the story because of all the cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. So, big hugs to you if you've been impacted. We had some breaking news about Biden's health, and I had said in last week's predictions that a public figure, a former leader, may have health issues, and it appears Biden does. I'm not surprised. I had health crisis after health crisis for him for multiple years while he was president, and had doubted his physical well-being. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but more about why I think it's being announced. And about having the energy and where we can put it that does more good for us in the current situation. Because it caused debates everywhere, including the Awake Space, and debate is fine. Debate is fine. People are allowed to feel how they will feel, but our opinions, they're ours. They're something that we own, our perspectives. One of the things I'm also going to talk about, coming out of the deep dive chat, somebody asked about tips on manifestation, like when you manifest something, but it doesn't quite end up going the way you hoped it would. So just like they say, better be careful what you pray for. You just might get it. We'll talk about that later on in this episode. Plus, we'll give you the weekly rundown of what to expect in the headlines. I'll give you an overview. Remember, deep dives where I go through in a lot more depth happen in the Patreon. And that segment is sponsored by the magazine tier. Speaking of magazine, it's coming. It's coming. If you are a patron, I release the May discounts and they're pretty juicy, so make sure you take advantage of those. If you haven't seen it, go check. Go check. All right. Get your tea, get your coffee, get your iced tea, get your matcha, get your H2O. And whether we're driving to work or we're taking the kids to school, or we're probably not taking the kids to school this time of year, but maybe you are. Maybe school's not out yet. It used to get out in June when I was a kid. But maybe you're going to the park or you're taking a hot girl or a hot guy walk, whatever you're doing. Um, whether it's the dishes or folding the laundry or working on a website or trying to dissociate at work, whatever we're doing together, I'm glad you're doing it with me. And I always love helping with chores, especially when I don't have to do them. All right, let's talk about this week. May is interesting. We are heading towards Saturn entering Aries. It's something I talked about with the astrology crew on Saturday. That recording will go up this week. And one of the things I was talking about is like, we've never seen Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. No living astrologer has seen it. And it hasn't happened in hundreds and hundreds of years because I went back and I looked, and so Neptune wasn't visible. So we really have no recorded history from an astrological point of view of Saturn being conjunct Neptune in Aries. We've seen Saturn conjunct Neptune. In fact, we just saw it earlier this year, but it was in Pisces. And it's just kind of interesting that they meet up again in Aries at the beginning of the sign. Okay. So one of the things I was saying, because we had both Astrology Crew and Cosmic Surfers this week. And one of the things I was saying was, it's almost like Saturn's entering into Aries in stealth mode. Now, the last time Saturn was in Aries, it entered in 1996, April 6th. And there were some very interesting happenings. I'm putting together a presentation that's going out this week um, for patrons, all patrons at the supporting level. And so I was looking at, because I was pregnant with my second child, but I was an astrologer. And this is what has me super excited, because this is the first like big transit where, as an astrologer, I'm getting to witness a second go round. So Pluto had moved into Sagittarius and that year, and I was still getting to grips, but Saturn I had a little better handle on. I was still looking at Pluto with fear and trepidation as a young astrologer back then. I only had, just less than a year. I was probably in the game for about 6, 7 months in 96 in April. And so, but I had enough of a feel. I remember kind of observing my own life. And granted, I was as bad as everybody I tease. And the reason why I tease of like, oh no, doom and gloom, is because I did it too. It's easy to do. It's easy to look for, when you've had a life where it's bad things happen to me, your perspective is set. So that's what you're looking for, right? Um, so I have sympathy for it, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't help you and it doesn't make you a better astrologer. But this is my first time observing a transit that I observed with interest. But I did have to go back because, again, I was pregnant, so I wasn't necessarily paying attention to the whole world because I had missed thing. I had thing 1 and thing 2 was on the way. Um, so as I look at this, I go back to 1996 and like, what was happening then? There were a couple of interesting things. There was quite a few kabooms, large explosions. Um, those were pretty sizable, and they happened within days of Saturn entering Aries. There was a move in the peace negotiations between Israel and Palestine, and there had been some peace agreements made at that time. Not convinced that's what's going to happen this go round, but that's when Yasser Arafat agreed to accept that Israel had a right to exist, and Israel countered with the same. They said that we were moving towards that two-state solution that people talk about. I know somebody, when I was talking about things with the group, people were like, "Well, that didn't last long." And I'm like, "No, it didn't." Um, but one of the most interesting things is May 11th, I believe. I could be off by a day or two, but May 11th of 1996, Ukraine signed their constitution into being. So they're heading towards their Saturn return. Although it's, all right, let's do a break here. A Saturn return, even if it's, goes forward, it goes back, and then it goes forward onto it again. So that would be direct motion, retrograde motion, direct. You don't get 3 Saturn returns. It's the final return that sets the chart. Okay, it's the final return that sets the chart. I have a whole video on that. You can find that linked up into the Patreon or on my YouTube channel, how to know when you're in your Saturn return. It does not last for 3 years. In fact, it doesn't last the whole time Saturn's in the sign. The Saturn return is like any return. Your solar return is when the sun returns exactly to the degree and minute it is in your birth chart. A lot of times your birthday, not always. Could be the day before, the day of, the day after. The Saturn return is when Saturn returns exactly to the degree and minute it is in the birth chart. That's simple. And it makes a chart. Just like a solar return chart makes a chart. So I have a whole video for patrons on the introduction to what a return chart is. All right. Introduction to return charts, where I walk you through what they are, not how to read them, but just so you know. Okay. But I do find it interesting that Saturn is doing this, and we have the Ukraine Russia action going on. We have Palestine Israel going on. There's echoes. Okay, remember everything rhymes. So I found that interesting. I'm going to go through that a little bit more in detail in the presentation in Patreon, but I just thought it was kind of a fun fact. But Saturn's not going to be in Aries for very long. It enters Aries on the 24th of May, and it stays there until September 1st, where it egresses out of Aries and ingresses again back into Pisces until February 14th. So, so happy Valentine's Day with Saturn entering Aries next year, on Valentine's Day. But we're getting a sneak peek, but it's not giving the full reveal because, again, Saturn is kind of obscured by Neptune. It's like Saturn's in stealth mode in Aries as it meets up with Neptune. It's a very fascinating energy, and I'm sure the 24th, now it's the evening of the 24th, so it's really the 24th, 25th. Okay, it's really the 24th, 25th. We will see some very interesting happenings. It could even be as early as the 23rd. We now have, as I speak, we have Saturn at the 29th degree. In fact, it's sitting around 29, 34 degrees, 29. It's sitting around 29 degrees, 34 minutes of Pisces. So it's slowly moving in. If you've been feeling a little tired, under the weather, feeling more pressure, it's probably because Saturn is at that last degree of the sign. 29 is an anaretic degree. It means it holds the maturity of the sign. So however it's been behaving as it's made it through its transit, it's ripe. It's ready to pick. We know how it behaves. And Pisces, as much as it obscures things, so we've seen authority obscured. We've seen a lot of smoke and mirrors, which brings us kind of to the Joe Biden situation. His health always was in question. Now, we can talk about one person and it not be about another person, right? Like, I get very tired of people going, what about? Whataboutism is very dangerous. It didn't get the wrong president. The universe doesn't pick favorites. Don't worry, the other one's health is in the garbage too. So it's fascinating. When I was reading an article on Biden's health, it said that he had some surgeries to remove some cancer back in 2023. Now, I was watching his health like a hawk, and I don't remember them admitting he had cancer removed. I knew they took a lesion at one point, but I felt they were not being upfront about his health, and I kind of had some inside scoops from some patrons who were in the know that my health predictions were pretty on it. It's important that if we're going to demand of one person, we demand of another, but we're not going to get that satisfaction. But there probably is a health event on the horizon in the next couple of months for the other one. You know what I mean? But anyway, who shall not be named. I think they release the information now to kind of deflect away from the current conversation that has been running in Democrat circles, which it's once again poor strategy. They'd be doing a better job looking at midterms and looking at the states and looking at flipping the House or securing the Senate. But instead, they're ripping apart a failed presidential run. It's like, okay. Remember, I said a long time ago they were going to have to restructure. Both parties will have to restructure at some point, and sooner than later. I was looking at David Hogg's chart, and that's something I'll probably do in the deep dive. But in David Hogg's chart, he's definitely has people coming out of the woodwork and people he doesn't expect to not have his back. People who agreed with him in private and publicly are holding the line. Um, you have to remember that systems are designed to survive, and systems will defend themselves regardless of whatever assault. And we are seeing our own system defend itself. It may be clunky, it's ugly, and it appears that somebody's getting away with everything, but the judicial branch is holding. I always said the Constitution holds by a thread. It holds by a thread. It makes it through, kind of. It doesn't disintegrate entirely. Let's put it that way. But it really behooves people, especially as we move towards 2026. It behooves you to understand how systems work. With Saturn moving into Aries, what you can expect on a personal level, including with the conjunction to Neptune, is it's kind of a good idea to lean into your capabilities and look at building sustainable frameworks and a sustainable life. It is a good idea to get your personal responsibility and accountability in order. That's really important. It's also super important to understand where you don't have structures in place that you need to have in place. And instead of thinking, I can't, with Neptune conjunct Saturn, it's a really good time to lean into your imagination and understand how much you can crystallize, because Neptune at the higher octaves is imagination and faith, and Saturn is crystallization of form, and the two together make it a little bit easier to make a nascent structure. It's a good time for Neptune to erode structures that don't serve us. Those could be relationships that don't serve anything in the framework of our lives. It could be how we spend money. It could be how we earn our money. It could be how we resource ourselves and gain stability. I went through that in Astrology Crew a lot more in depth. I mean, we talked about it for like 2 hours. Understand, Saturn isn't the bad guy. We don't like Saturn because the restriction aspect. But, running with scissors is a bad idea. You're going to poke your eye out with them. It's not so much restriction. So think about it. Our bones are not super bendy, right? They're restricted in how they function. Our joints can only go certain directions, right? And even those of us who can maybe hyperextend a little bit, okay? But my arm isn't going to go all the way back, right? Right. That restriction is part of what helps me be mobile and helps me have fluid function. Okay. So without our bones, we'd be gelatinous bags of goo, and Saturn rules the bones. It rules that part of us. So understand that some restrictions are necessary because we're physical. Okay. And just doing whatever isn't it. If you don't like what you're doing, then create the structure. There's always a cost in life and in magic. There's always a cost. Okay. To become really, really good at something, the cost is you let go of other things to become very good at that one thing, or those 5 things, whatever you choose to be good at. There's always a cost. So with Saturn, it's always, what am I willing to let go of? What am I willing to lose in order to gain? I could lose my fear. I could lose my imposter syndrome. I could lose my doubt. I could lose my worry. I could lose my insecurities. I could lose the thought habits that hold me back. So that's very, very important to remember. Okay. We don't just have to lose the things we love. And Saturn in Aries is about self-discipline. It's about gaining habits that help us survive or thrive, right? Whether it's learning to own your authority when it comes to having boundaries, or how you choose to speak about yourself, or how you choose to show up, you know, and disciplining yourself in that. Those are all important subjects around Saturn and Aries. It's a good time to gain a discipline that helps you move towards self realization. Realization is another Saturnian word. I want to realize, crystallize, actualize. You need processes to do that, and Saturn governs process. You can't reach your ambitions, whatever they are. And ambition doesn't just mean you want to be a greedy billionaire. It can be, you can be ambitiously philanthropic. You can be ambitious for your health. You can be ambitious for your family. We all have goals and ambitions. And this Neptune Saturn conjunction will be something that is quite interesting. Now, Saturn gets challenged by Jupiter on June 9th when Jupiter enters Cancer. And that's going to be fascinating. But that's a different podcast episode. So, yeah, let's take a minute together and let's take a look at what else is up on deck. Coming up this week, we'll do a little bit of what's in the headlines. Then we'll do some patron shout outs. And I'll answer that question about manifestation. Let's take a look at this week's headlines. I know I switched over my computer. I was trying to do it on my phone, so pardon the audio quality differences. Next week, we'll be back in the studio. So, the weather, it's going to continue to be something else, guys. It just is. I wish I could tell you different, but let me pull up what's in the headlines. I talked about this in the Patreon, and this week I'll be getting us through that Saturn and Aries ingress that I just talked about. This segment is sponsored by the Awake Space magazine tier, and that magazine is coming to you soon. I'll have June headlines ready. You'll get them in advance. And yes, I will read out the horoscopes. Alrighty. May 17th through the 20th, we had the moon in Aquarius. As crazy as this crazy does. This energy is sharp, direct, and snippy. Moon is still in Aquarius here on the 19th. I have wind, hail, and rain, or sudden snow in southern hemisphere. So again, we've got big storms still up on deck. The moon will be opposite Mars on the 19th, so that's going to make things a little unstable. So we've got temperatures in flux, solar storm or northern lights, or both, polar vortex, ice and glacier melts, and rising sea levels. Remember, that doesn't mean it's going to happen that day. It just means it's up on deck. People are talking about it. It doesn't even mean like it's bad news. Like one day I had predicted polar ice would be in the news, and they talked about more ice coming and growing and stabilizing in Antarctica in a scientific article. So it's not always bad. Communication failures, satellite malfunction, internet glitches, and hacking announced. Big shocks, I know. U.S. military could have an accident or face a loss or is attacked somewhere in the world. We've got icebergs, melting glaciers, sea ice, AMOC, and climate crisis up in the headlines. That shouldn't be a huge surprise. We could hear about issues to do with fertilizer, farm technology, land use. We could see vehicular violence in crowded spaces, crypto slips, dips, or suddenly gains. International coalition places sanctions on a major power, or there's an accusation. Huge protests in Eastern and Western Europe could be up on deck. All markets volatile. Legal system under strain. Justices under threat, or government agencies are closed. This could be anywhere in the world. That could be global. We could see an issue with a power plant, chemical plant, accidents and explosions. We could see a political upset, coup d'etat, leader deposed, military junta or coup, invasion or attack. That could be global. Public violence. Protesters could be attacked with more force, so there could be, excessive use of force. We could hear about internet censorship, tech sector volatile issues with AI and more layoffs on the internet censorship. That could be that bill to ban porn, which is a threat to our freedom of speech. I'll talk about that in the deep dive. Increased chance of seismic activity above a 6.0 globally in any active region, greater than average chance for small swarms of 3.5 and lower in volcanic areas. And that could be out to sea. I think that's probably more towards like Monday night, Tuesday morning. That's when I think we're going to see the bigger storms, is late Monday night into Sunday morning. Let me just take a look at the chart. That's something I do in our deep dives, is I'll take a look Monday night, May 19th, Monday night evening. Be aware there could be big storms, big lightning, thunder, hail. That would be more like the evening of the 19th, into the early hours of the 20th. So if you live anywhere, let me just, this is where I do a public service, even though I'm doing deep dives in the Patreon. I want people to be as safe as possible. I'll give you some directions on this. This would be like 1 a.m. Pacific, so 4 a.m. Eastern, maybe upper Midwest. Okay, maybe upper Midwest. This big hail. So upper Midwest to the Mid-East, not East Coast per se, but it might even be as far in as like Eastern Pennsylvania, maybe. There could be some big thunder showers, lots of lightning. Eastern Europe needs to keep an eye out for weather or aggression. They can look like the same things. That is something up on deck. Let's see. Getting a look here. And again, pardon me for not being in my studio. All right. So I think we could see some missile launches, or bombings and drone attacks. And again, that any active conflict, but it could be something more notable. So not just like, oh yeah, there's a war going on, but there could be like a surprise attack of some kind. May 20th through the 22nd, the moon enters Pisces on the 20th and has Neptune saying, who's your daddy? So even though Neptune is in Aries, but it's remember, Pisces is ruled by Neptune. We've got record-breaking waves in areas with surfing. This could be Australia, Hawaii, Fiji. We could see pharmacies, drugs, and medicine. Now, just like the baby who had that new gene therapy was cured, this could be advances in pharmacology. That was one of the good things I saw as an outcome of Saturn and Pisces. So that could happen. We could see an event in the Caribbean. It could be an earthquake, could be a storm, could be a military coup, could be, again, storms and military action can look a lot alike. They bear similar signatures in astrology. We could see an explosion at a manufacturing plant or at a port. We could see Navy clashes, issues with submarines, loss of a ship or a sub, or an accident with the Navy or a Navy. Issues at ports, piers, docks, and marinas. Big weather in the southeast USA, especially the Gulf Coast. We could see water quality issues, sewers, and or waterborne illnesses up in the headlines. People could have mystical visions, mass hysteria, religious experiences. We could see issue with mental health where there's psychosis or mass hysteria. And we've got a mental health crisis because people's needs aren't being addressed and people don't have access to the right kind of support. So we're going to see more and more of that. JD Vance could have a problem. And Trump is under pressure, potential physical impairment or attack on him. There could be an increased use of bombs, missiles, and expansion of war in any current conflict, large civilian casualties. We could see issues with drug cartels and gangs. They could get retribution, or they might be in the news for attacks at borders, or maybe there's violence against a political figure. This could be in any country where those things are going on. We could see a mass casualty event somewhere in the world. Drug overdoses and tampered drugs may be in the news, and that could be anything from like fentanyl to, whoever's talking about it. This is just what I see coming up in the headlines. And then pharmaceuticals having breakthroughs in treatments. Again, I think we may hear of another breakthrough. There is good happening in this world, so we may hear about some good stuff. Medicare may obviously be in the news as well. And Medicaid. Oil spills, oil platforms, issues with natural gas or other kinds of petrochemicals, including gas stations and depots and refineries. Oil tanker or big Navy ship has an accident, or truck carrying a volatile load has an accident, fire, or explosion. Those are things that could be in the news. So yeah, but keep your eye out for the weather, regardless of where you live, because climate change is a thing. Remember, the transits are global. Accidents or political upheaval can also be big storms or natural events, and vice versa. Somebody once asked, why don't I talk about Africa? Well, when I see stuff happening in African countries, I'll bring it up. I have in the past. So, but there will be continued issues going on with the Red Sea for certain. So anything that borders that, like the Horn of Africa, etc., they may be in the news more frequently in the coming weeks. May 22nd, the moon enters Aries. There ain't no smoke, it's all fire, and the moon stays in Aries till the 24th, which is kind of good. It would be kind of a lot to have the moon in Aries at the same degree as Saturn, so it's kind of nice that we're getting a little bit of a reprieve. So we could hear about acts of war, shots fired, could be Iran, Israel, India, Pakistan, Philippines, and China, Ukraine. Even in the United States, we could have something happen like at the Mexico border where we've been putting troops. We could hear about incendiary devices, heavy smog, smoke, poison gases that ignite. We could hear about that anywhere in the world. All of these are global. Hot and humid weather hits coastal area, or sea burns due to chemicals in an oil slick and or both. A terrorist attack that impacts a nation. This is global. Is possible. It doesn't mean it's for sure. Elon Musk has a crisis. He could face a health crisis or face a legal challenge. Trump faces a challenge to authority or a health crisis. Mass violence in a public venue. Northeast faces big weather event. Could involve fires, lightning, or a strange fog. Iran in crisis. Could be U.S. declares war or makes a strike on nuclear targets. That could be Israel making a strike or declaring war as well, because they're in negotiations. So maybe the negotiations don't go well, or maybe, again, instead of the United States, it's actually Israel. Volcanic eruption or a firestorm, or issues with lava flow and lahars. Increase in geothermal activity. Accident at a military base or facility. Death of a prominent celebrity could be discussed. It could be a politician or a person of note. This is global. We could see a massive accident in a dock or port or between large vessels. Forest fire or fire on public lands could be at Poland, Balkans, Moldova, dealing with border security and potential sabotage and terrorist attacks. That would maybe include Romania, Estonia, Latvia, the Baltic states as well. So any of that area. could have problems. We could hear about road rage. In fact, be really careful driving when the moon's in Aries. This because it's going to be making moves with Venus and Mars. So there might be some hot tempers on the road. Arson, fires to important public buildings and structures. Okay, attempted coups, insurrection, and political violence. Leaders of all forms face opposition. This is global. Potential assassinations or deposing of leaders is possible. CEO or world leader faces health crisis, arterial strokes, or head injuries. NATO makes a declaration. Airspace closed or airport shut down. And gosh knows in the States that could be because air traffic control. Exploding engines or large equipment. So, let's see. Massive accident at a dock or port. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. There we go. And again, I'll go deeper into this. So this is going to be the interesting couple of days. I'm sure every day has interesting headlines because we're in 2025, right? Let me just take a look. So Memorial Day weekend is when Saturn moves into Aries. We've got May 24th through the 26th with the moon in Taurus, and it's charging in at full speed. So I think we could see accidents with chemicals or a petroleum plant, pipeline, refinery, or food processing plant. We could see arson of a government building or manufacturing plant, like a big building. The US dollar could be under strain. We could see issues at a port. There could be explosions. There could be a major accident with toxic waste. That could be on a train or a truck. Crypto market could be very volatile. Stock market could be volatile, although it's over the weekend, so maybe it's foreign markets. Global economic crisis. Economic treaties could fail. So like maybe some of the tariff agreements, or maybe he backs down on tariffs a little more. We could see issues with munitions depots, plants, or stolen weapons and equipment. Massive accident involving semi-trucks or rail. U.S. placed under sanctions or monitoring. That's kind of a huge outside that maybe, probably not, but could happen. It could be another world power, though, as well. Massive hail, it could be like Russian sanctions are discussed. Massive hail, lightning, and tornadoes, hurricanes of significance. This could happen. Power outages, and that would probably be more like on the 24th during the day as Saturn gets ready to leave Pisces. Power outages, network outages could be a systems failure or issue with solar flares and a geomagnetic storm, maritime accident or issues with naval bases, financial institutions, big banks, private equity firms, credit card companies can have a crisis or have bad news, retail giant under pressure or strain, authority figures and leaders challenged, huge weather issues. Now, what do I say if I'm duplicating my prediction as I'm writing? Because I'm blind as a bat, I write with everything magnified, and I'm not looking, I'm just writing. So when I get it on my predictions 2 or 3 times, that's probably the surest bet of what's going to show up. But we do have huge weather issues: lightning, hail, hurricanes, tornadoes, sandstorms, and or torrential rain and flooding. That's anywhere in the world, global. Big erosion events, mudslides, sinkholes, levee breaches, dike failures, dam breaches. So I'm going to say weather is probably a big deal. We could see a big political uprising or surprise attack. And I have Ukraine in question mark. I have Russia and USA. Now, I did see something where they were like saying that peace talks could happen maybe at the Vatican that weekend. I was like, no, I have predictions for the Vatican. I'm not even a big fan of the Vatican. So, but I'm like, oh, That would be weird. By the way, big political upset or uprising or surprise attack. And again, I think this would be more around the 24th. That's in capitals. When I write capitals, it's kind of, there's an urgency to it. There could be also in capitals, big accident, explosion, or fire. It could be more than one incident. This could happen anywhere in the globe. This could be due to weather. It could be arson, etc. We could see issues with livestock, food production, processing, farms, and ranches. We could hear about mutiny, rebellion, coups, and political upheavals and violence. This is global. World leader or person of note has accident or health crisis, and computer systems crash, or there could be a very big crisis in tech. So we could have another great update by Microsoft that makes all of our computers go. That happened to me this month too. Did it happen to you? All right, that's what's in the headlines. I'll get everybody up to date ahead of that for the deep dive in the magazine tier and up. Why don't we do some patron shout outs? All right, patrons, big thanks as always for supporting the podcast. I am very excited to welcome in our newest patrons while my phone gives me earthquake alerts for other parts of the world. It's been very active with the 5.0s and above. We've got Swamp Goblin, Marcy, Emily, Summer, Tiffany, Jordan, Gabriella, Stephanie, Amy, Amber, Megan, Tiffany, Clever Girl 139, Brittany, Bellady, Amber, Katie England, Sprinkle Tinkles, Brandy, Taylor Van Winkle, Kate, Lori, Helen, Popcorn Pie, Peanut, Cece, Sabrina, She Was Today, Marissa, Sarah, Takia, Tracy, Beatrix, Hannah, Shania, Courtney, Martina, Vanessa, Corinna, Artemio, J Mintz 87, Melissa, BLG, Cam, Molly, Karen, Pamela, Elizabeth, Carlotta, Maggie, Lindsay, Travis, Dara, Corinna, Head in the Air, Cassandra, Nikki, Hillary, Taylor, Emily, Bex, Shelby, Gabby, Candace, Jordan, Jenny, Alicia, Emily, Deb, and Mudang Jen. Well, thank you so much for your support. Every single week, I like to name our newest members. And without you, we have no podcast. All right, let's talk about manifestation and what happens when you get what you want, but it's not. So Allie asked me a really great question in the patron deep dive chat, and I thought I'd address some of it here because it was about manifestation. They were asking for some energy work tips, and they had some mixed results. They've gotten pretty good at manifesting now, which I can address here as well. In the deep dive, I'll go deeper into the subject, but let's talk about manifestation itself as a subject. First of all, we're always manifesting every single day of our lives because we're co-creating. Now, we could do that deliberately on purpose, or we can work on a default mechanism, which is why I talk about training our Mercuries, which means our minds. The best way I've heard it described is that sometimes we have sloppy thinking, and that's something Esther Hicks has said is sloppy thinkers, because we can be, and we all can be, including Esther. Okay, me, you, we can all be sloppy when we have well-practiced thoughts, when we get into the can't, won't, push against things without paying attention. We're always manifesting. All the time. Okay. Manifest means to reveal. And what do? We reveal our reality with our perceptions. Okay. It's just that simple. And everybody's perceptions are unique and individual. Remember when I say you could put 12 clairvoyants in a room and there could be energy for them to read, and all 12 could come up with a different answer. And all 12 could be right because it's perception based. We are translating vibrations and frequencies through our physical senses. And it's through our training, our education, our culture, our conditioning that we perceive things. I've been in a room where somebody freaked out because there was somebody channeling and they knew that person channeled, but because they had old residual fears and resistance, what they saw was very different to what I saw, and it scared them and they ran away. And what I saw was benevolent. Who was right? Who was wrong? It isn't about right and wrong. And as soon as people start understanding that this good, bad, white hat, black hat, fear-based thinking is how we're supposed to do things. As long when you figure out that polarity is what's going to bump you down the road and it's going to cause the most resistance for anyone. If you can't figure that out, it's going to be a bumpy ride. All right. I used to jokingly call it the celestial sledgehammer because that's what it took to get my attention. And it's funny. I could get it in certain areas like this. I could see energy. I could read people's auras. I could, thoughts popped into my head all the time. I got great ideas. And then there were other areas of life where I had well-practiced thought habits where it was just like a no-go. It just was a constant struggle because there was a big, well-developed block. Okay. This idea, anybody who's telling you they manifested the perfect life is full of crap. Okay. There's always going to be something we need to refine and improve on, because how boring would it be if we just got everything we wanted? A really good example of that is the creator of Minecraft. There was a story going around, he sold this game. He loved building games. He built this game out of his love and passion of building games. He never set out to be rich. He didn't want to run a company. He ended up selling it. And then he ended up kind of getting everything he could get and lost his meaning and his purpose. Okay. And it's not an urban legend. This was reported in Forbes. Okay. What he didn't learn how to do was learn how to want something else, build another challenge. He had a singular focus. And that comes from thinking things are going to be hard. He probably thought, this is going to be hard. I'm never going to get there. And he got there and he didn't have anywhere to grab hold of. It's not a fault thing and it's not a blame thing, but it's an uncomfortable thing to learn. And I personally don't like saying oh, the universe is handing out lessons. I think we came here to have a range of experiences. I really do. I think we came here for the ups, the downs, the grit, and everything causes expansion. It's easy to think about it when it's a good thing, but when bad things happen, we think we've failed. We think that we're not favored by the universe. We think that bumpy ride is a problem, when actually it's often what's creating that next step. Okay. So the bumpy ride, Allie, you weren't doing anything wrong. It's part of the experience. Just like when you see astronauts going up into space, right? And the films where their face is going back and they're like, oh, the resistance of moving to that next step. There's always going to be some. And that's why we talk about the path of least resistance. It doesn't mean there won't be any resistance, but it's the least amount. So as small as we can get it. And it's not about being high vibe only, okay? But like attracts like. So if we have stinking thinking, if we're constantly going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what do you think is going to happen? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Learning to turn our attention to things that can be more effective. So if we're only looking at problems, we can't find a solution. Have you ever looked for your car keys? Right. And people always think about the big stuff, winning the lottery, getting the big bucks, getting the fancy car, getting the hot dude, hot gal, hot them. Car keys. Have you ever lost them? And you're like, I can't find my keys. Can't find my keys. Can't find my keys. You probably didn't find them till you go, I know I had them. And then all of a sudden they appear in your vision, or somebody goes, found them, right? The more you're saying, I can't find my keys, I can't find my keys, I can't find my keys. First of all, this isn't even energy. This is your brain. Your brain is like, yep, can't find the keys. Can't find them. Right? So your brain is part of the energy work. When it's bumpy, a good reminder is this is creating something good. Something good is on the way. It's always going to work out. You've got to use your mind. You can light all the candles you want. You can pull out all the crystals you want. You write everything out on a bay leaf. It's not the bay leaf. It's you. It's your belief that bay leaf is going to work. And I'm not saying don't use bay leaf. I'm just saying if you handed a bay leaf to somebody who didn't believe in doing that, it would probably have little to no effect, because belief is the spark that empowers it. Okay. So when we're doing manifestation work, like deliberate manifestation, there's so many tools. I think Abraham Hicks' work is actually very good when it comes to that. There are those who haven't listened fully or with an open mind, or they're just not there yet, who'll be like, oh, they blame the victim, and they don't. They're if you listen and when they talk on subjects, they're actually very careful. There's a lot of stuff repeated about them that if you haven't investigated it is not accurate, in my opinion. Okay. I actually really enjoy their work because I didn't like their work when I was introduced to it in 1986. Which was the first year they were public, I found out. But my friend's mom was like, she was like a hippie mom, and she was really into it. She made my friend and I listen. I was like, I don't like her. She sounds like my mom. She has a very similar voice to my mother. And I was like, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to my mom. I was 17, And so I went off and I ended up studying, everything from Steiner to Alice Bailey. I studied more in-depth metaphysics that complicated it, made it intellectual. But that's where I was at, right? Well, our souls will take us whatever route has the least resistance. I was very convinced that anything worth having was hard. And so I would throw myself and my weight into everything I did. And the weirder the information, the more in-depth, the more brain melty it was, the more I was like, oh, this must be good stuff. And the Abraham Hicks stuff to me seemed very oversimplified. And I was not interested until about 10 years, about 15 years ago. It came back into my world and I went, oh my God, that's the most succinct way of putting that very complex metaphysical principle into an easily digestible form. And it's really well described, and it very much describes everything from quantum entanglement to ritual magic. Just the ritual of getting up and having a cup of tea and sitting and getting still for a minute. We love to talk about meditation. They talk about meditation, but I'm going to say just having the art of stillness and really feeling into things, letting go of attachment to the outcome. Like it has to turn out this day. I always feel bad for people who make like their wedding day the most important day of their life. I'm like, oh man, you got a whole lot of life to live. That's going to be the very best day. So the rest of your life is going to suck. Especially if you're young, there's a whole lot of life to live. Having a really good day and making really great memories that you can build on. Notice that's a nice little reframe on that. Putting all your hopes and dreams into one particular path when there could be 5 or 6 paths you could walk on, and each one could be rewarding. But when we put our minds so set on things having to be a certain way and all of the details having to be a certain way, then we limit ourselves. We limit ourselves. We have a better chance at getting more of what we want that sustains us, delights us, energizes us when we let go of every tiny little detail We allow ourselves to be very, very clear, and we let go of the outcome. Let go of how it has to happen. Let go of the who. I think a lot of times people think there's just one person, or there's just one job, or there's just one experience. And that's what's going to validate them as a human being. And I think that is the biggest mistake most people make, is they don't understand that you've got to chill out. You've got to have ways to trust the process. Things can move as fast or as slow as we are able to receive. Okay. And one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially when it comes to like money matters, is they hold on too tightly to moral judgments on effectively a tool. Like, money is the root of all evil. The rich people are bad. All rich people are greedy. There are wealthy people who are giving their money away. When you look at Melinda Gates, French, I think is her last name now. Melinda Gates French. When you look at even the Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in fact, they're speeding up. Doesn't mean those people are inherently great people, even. They're philanthropic. Okay. We want to judge people and money in the same space. Money is a tool. And one of the ways I teach people financial manifestation, bringing in the money, to discharge the charge, is you can be like, okay, here's my nails. My nails are money. It's nails. It's money. The couch, it's money. It's a couch. The wall is money. It's a wall. It's money. Mother's Day card, money. It's you don't have a moral feeling about the wall or the couch or the nails. Well, maybe do the nails. The glasses, right? The glasses. And people are like, they're thick glasses. But they are what they are. Money is what it is. The more you're like, money, I always hear that in people's tone when they talk about it. They'll be like, I'm going to manifest. They'll be really chilled out and they go, money. And they get really tight. And I'm like, well, that's not going to attract it today. It's not going to attract it today. That's not what it's going to do. So it's really important to let go and to reframe. It's not going to make you greedy. It's not going to make you one of the bad guys. In fact, money reveals who people are. That's what it does. If you were, the people who are jerks with money, I can guarantee you they were jerks before they had what they have today. They were probably never very nice. Okay. It doesn't really change you. It reveals you. And what is manifest? It means to reveal. So if you want to reveal this new self, okay, and you're a new self in every experience, right? So if you want to reveal yourself in a better financial circumstance, then work on yourself to meet that. I always like to say, don't fake it till you make it, be it till you become it. You have to realize it may not happen overnight. Some things take time. You don't plant a seed in the ground and get, a watermelon that day. It's not a beanstalk. Jack and the Beanstalk planted his beans and they grew right away. That's what people are looking for. That doesn't happen. You can have things happen over a series of years, months, weeks, days. But you've probably been working on it before that, right? You can manifest an ice cream cone. That's probably easier than manifesting a house. Why? Because you think a house is a big, fat, hairy deal. And when you're trying to manifest a big, fat, hairy deal, it's probably going to take longer. Right? Doesn't mean it has to. Some things can take a decade, 20 years. Some things can happen at the end of life that you thought would never happen. Some things can happen like that. And it looks like a miracle. all in all, it's how much we're willing to receive and how much we're willing to let go of. We're so attached to our conditioning that this is how the world works. This is what a good person is. This is what a person is who isn't good. This is, the morals of it, right? That we don't really question. So I would say it's probably a good idea to question your beliefs around these things. Question when there's a bump. I remember as a young woman, I was 21, and the things I had set out to do at 18, everyone I grew up with, all the adults in my life, aunts, uncles, some teachers, friends' parents would be like, what you want to do is impossible. People just don't do that. Or you won't get that done till you're in your 40s. Because most people didn't. Most people didn't, especially where I grew up. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, so it was well out of the normal scope of things. By the time I was 25, I had literally done everything except one thing. And I really asked, like, is this it? Is this all was not as hard as everyone told me. And I had gained the success I had hoped for. And what do you do with that? I wasn't happy with it. So I manifested it, but I wasn't happy with it. And that was the very first, when I was about 25, because it was around the same time I found astrology. I asked the owner of the internet cafe if I could teach a personal development class. And he was like, sure. And I called it Successful Thinking, Successful Living, because I knew how to attain a goal. But what I wanted to know was, what did other people think what success was? Because to me, it was empty. It was, I'd set my sights on something and I'd make it happen. I'd set my sights on something and nothing got in my way. And then sometimes I used sheer will to make it happen. That didn't always work out so well. That got me in some pickles. Like the job that took me to the Ivory Coast when I was 21. They didn't want to hire me. They said I was too young. And I thought they were being ageist. No, it really wasn't a safe space for me to be with very limited experience in a developing country. And it was politically very volatile, and it ended up being a very scary situation. I was very lucky, though, because one of my other very well-worn thought habits is I always meet the nicest people. And of course, I met the nicest people there, and I got a lot of help, and I made it through, and I survived it. Taught me a lot. But I forced myself to make that happen, right? So when we impose our will on things to override the little yellow caution lights we get sent by our guides in the universe, like, maybe not a good idea, and you do it, so when we push past that can make it bumpy too. A lot of times what happens, and this is something I really learned at that time at 25 when I hosted this class, because I invited people from all walks of life, people who were captains of industry, people who were married well, people who ran businesses, people who were salespeople, people who were musicians. They were just, it was a neat little collective of different people, very diverse. And I would lead a meditation, and then then I facilitated a conversation, and we would do like worksheets I created. And everybody got a lot out of it because it was very self-reflective. It was like, really, what is success? And we had these really interesting conversations. And the thing I came out of it was, and you have to remember, the internet was very new. We didn't have all the gurus, and we didn't have all the podcasts, and we didn't have all of that. So this was on the ground research. And what I came out with was, it has to be self-described. And what I had done is I had either been trying to prove people wrong, which is a fun goal in and of itself, but not super meaningful. or I was trying to prove my worth to my parents and do what they thought was important. So I was living somebody else's idea of success and not my own, or I didn't have enough information. When I thought it would be really cool, and I disillusioned myself. I'd go in with maybe a really overly intellectualized viewpoint of something, or an overly romanticized viewpoint of something, and then I'd hit the reality of it, and that wasn't what I wanted at all. But I didn't know. Like, you couldn't know. You can do enough research, you can know stuff, but until you live it, you don't know. And those are the lessons we learn. It's not like the universe is shaming you and wagging a finger, and your guides are like, ha ha ha, look at her, what a fool. Not at all. They're like, they're learning. They're learning. Look at them. They're learning. No, 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 don't beat yourself up. No, no, no. You're learning. That's good. You're expanding. You're growing. No, 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 don't beat yourself up. And then you sit there, not you necessarily, Allie, but you, dear listener, maybe, maybe not, may go, oh man, I failed. I screwed up. The universe is going to punish me, because you have this idea of crime and punishment from a lot of organized religions. If you sin, even though out of the other side of the mouth, this is a loving God. And that's many religions. This loving God. Oh, you're in trouble now, mister. And in my experience, over these many years, it's never a punishment. We may think we're punished, and I certainly did when I was in my 20s. I certainly felt that. But by the time I hit my Saturn return, I knew it might be consequences, because there are always logical consequences, right? If we don't have all the information and we jump in with both feet, there's going to be a consequence. It's not a punishment. It just, if this is happening, then this is the logical outcome, right? If I enter in without asking enough questions, I'm bound to experience a reality that is unexpected, right? Thinking everybody thinks the same way and not asking enough questions may find you disillusioned. If you're in a group, we're constantly manifesting. We're constantly revealing things to ourselves. But we often don't self-reflect enough to see our part in it. And I'll talk about this with Saturn and Aries coming in, because it is about personal accountability and personal responsibility. And that's not about beating yourself up. It's about acknowledging and just saying like, oh, well, that didn't go the way I wanted it to. Oh, well, I need to change it up if I want that to happen. It doesn't mean, you're never supposed to give up on your dreams, but maybe you're not clear in your dream. Sometimes we want things because we're running away from a problem instead of seeking a solution. If we're running to something versus away from something, makes a difference. Because we can run away from our problems, but they chase us or they come in the suitcase, right? That's why we have baggage. But if we're moving towards something, not away from it, if we're moving towards feeling content, if we're moving towards trusting ourselves and trusting our guidance, if we're moving towards being able to see or hear with more clarity, if we're moving towards community instead of fearing isolation, they're simple to conceptualize. It's another thing to do them, and it takes practice. I would start on small things that hold not a lot of weight, whether it's looking for a particular color, a number sequence, and making our demands of the universe. We can do that. Cultivating discernment is really important. I really urge you to seek out written material, from libraries, especially things from the 30s, the 90s. Look at Rudolf Steiner's work. Look at Alice Bailey's work. Look at Esther Hicks's work. Look at the Seth Speaks books. Studying these things because they talk about it. Understanding quantum physics at a very general level. You don't have to become a quantum physicist, but understanding quantum mechanics theory to some degree. We are energetical beings condensed into a physical framework, and part of our experiences are to have the bumps and the bruises. And some people are really good at manifesting physical things or money or perfect parking. And some people are better at manifesting relationships and friendships and maybe really good gifts. I knew somebody who could win any raffle they wanted to win in. Like they just walk in and go, yep, that's good stuff. I want to win that. And they would every time they could call it. Other people are good at calling dice and cards, right? It's where we feel it's easy. And we repel what we think is hard. And so making life easier is the goal, but not so easy it's not interesting anymore. There's always going to be another step to go until we're done and done with the life, So not wanting more or to experience more and to be greedy about life experience, not the dollars in the bank, but just life and living life. So many people are waiting for the right time and they want the perfect conditions, and they'll even ask me, do you draw your own charts for events? I do very little electional astrology, very little. What I do is I operate off my guidance, and then I'll pull a chart when I make a decision. Because I learned when you try to pick the perfect date, you're trying to control all the circumstances. And those charts don't just have one way to go. There are many factors that play into it. So I hope I answered your question, and I look forward to going deeper into this in the deep dive. So get more questions ready, everybody, at the magazine tier and up. Get those questions ready for the deep dive this week, so I can help you understand a little more about energy and our perceptions and how to switch our filters. And I've got some interesting and maybe even scary stories to tell about seeing energy and working with energy and learning how to work with it and how to shield. Alrighty. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening this week. Hope you have a good week. If you're in the way of the weather, please be safe. And make sure you listen to those local weather forecasters because, again, they are the heroes. I want to thank every single one of the patrons for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you ever so much. And please do thank a patron in the comments. It's a wonderful thing when you guys do that. And don't be afraid to share this with your friends, okay? Don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends or family or anybody into it. Don't share with people who aren't going to like it. But if you know somebody who might get a kick out of it, feel free to share us. All right, I'm Laurie Rivers. As always, it's my privilege to be of service to you. Have a beautiful week.